Go ahead and call this council work session to order. It's Wednesday, January 4th, at 2 p.m. We're gonna start off with oath of office, and I guess I'll start. I really dressed up for you two.
Raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Rick Hill,
You solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution and the laws of the United States,
the state of Oregon,
the state of Oregon,
and the city of St. Helens,
and the city of St. Helens,
and I will honestly and faithfully perform
and I will honestly and faithfully perform
the duties of mayor
the duties of mayor
to the best of my ability and understanding
to the best of my ability and understanding
during my term of office.
during my term of office,
So help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations
Thank
again.
you.
That's 2 years ago.
Huh?
Yeah.
Hey, you guys want to flip the quarter?
All right. Okay.
Counselor Gunderson? Right hand, I, Mark Gunderson,
I, Mark Anderson,
do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States,
the state of Oregon,
the state of Oregon,
and the city of St. Helens,
and the city of St. Helens,
and will honestly and faithfully
and will honestly and faithfully
perform the duties of city councillor
will perform the duties of city councillor
to the best of my ability and understanding
to the best of my ability and understanding
during my term of office.
during my term of office.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Photos with anyone? Any family
I
members?
don't think any of my family members.
I, Brandon Sundin,
I, Brendan Sundin,
do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support the Constitution and the laws of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution and the laws of the United States,
the state of Oregon,
state of Oregon,
and the city of St.
and
Helens,
the city of St. Helens,
and will honestly and faithfully
and will honestly and faithfully
perform the duties of city councillor
perform the duties of city councillor
to the best of my ability and understanding
to the best of my ability and understanding
during the term of my office.
during the term of my office.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Now I know your family's here, so I think you should.
A whole bunch up here.
Come on up, guys.
Yay. What do you want us, Kristen? Your work?
Oh, wait, we can't see someone in the back there. There you go. We gotta have everyone. Perfect.
Thank you.
Well, and then also, like, can we get everybody who's coming in down here for a group?
Bossy that way.
John, do you wanna move over to the side?
No, I'm just moving out of the way.
Okay. Thank you.
And Counselor Gunderson, I think your family just walked in.
Come on.
Yeah. Can we redo it since so they can see you?
Perfect, thank you guys. Okay, we'll go ahead and open it up for visitor comments. If you have a comment, please come up, state your name for the record and keep the 3 minutes with us.
Afternoon. Stephen Toskey, resident of St. Helens and Planning Commissioner. I came today to welcome Councilor Mark Gunderson and Councilor Brandon Sundin to the City Council. Looking forward to working with you and the rest of the City Council concerning something near and dear to all of our hearts, the beautiful city of St. Helens. Having closely followed the issues confronting the council over the last 1.5 years, I'm encouraging the new members of the rest of the council to not waste time this year revisiting difficult decisions the council has made in the past which have proven successful. 2 items which come to mind immediately to the fore are the decisions to move forward with waterfront development and the decision to have an 18-month contract with our tourism contractor, E2C. Regarding tourism, we went from nearly not having a 4th of July show to having a seamless and enjoyable year of events, all paid for and free to the citizens of St. Helens by the revenues from Halloween Town. 2023 is going to be another great year. But we have a lot of work to do regarding finances and building our infrastructure. These things are going to cost money. I urge the council to understand the city's finances, its debt obligations, and how that debt will be repaid. The Planning Commission is here to collaborate and work with the council. We have proactive items on our agenda to consider legislation to recommend to the council in the areas of revenue generation, like a gas tax and business license tax for rentals. Also, regarding redevelopment, I have proposed that the Planning Commission look into recommending to the council regulations concerning blight and architectural standards. What is the council's vision for St. Helens? My vision is that expressed by its people and is exemplified by these drawings: a prosperous waterfront town. The history of St. Helens is Paycheck City. I have 30 years of history with St. Helens. We're in a renaissance and we are rising like a phoenix from the ashes. It is critical that we move forward with the waterfront development and to build housing to attract untethered workers and to have people who live here already move into them. People with good jobs who can work from anywhere and want to live in a place in what St. Helens has to offer, and to attract and keep people who are already living here. Succeeding in doing so will change our fortunes for the better forever. Do not fear this change and assure people that changes will not mean that St. Helens will no longer be the great place it is to live. It will be even better. I look forward to working with you and good luck.
You, I especially like the Phoenix out of the ashes.
Pete Topaz, past council member, congratulations on being elected. If you need help with my past here, I'll gladly help. 2 things, questions that I need answered. Basically continuing business of the council. Jacob Gresham brought up 2 things. One at the meeting for finances, and second, the last council meeting. The first had to do with the waterfront. We had quite a town meeting because the building height and the community came out and decided they did not want building height, and the council agreed with that. That cost us about $200 million in permit fees because of the excellence of this public meeting, we should have a public meeting of the people on the other side of Nob Hill overlooking the lagoon, which is going to be turned into a waste dump, mainly for toxic waste. The question is, when are we going to have this meeting? Second, again, Gresham pointed out that there was some surplus property that got moved to the growth, and procedure said in order for the city to relieve its upper property, go through a procedure. We went through a non-procedure when we removed the property from the usual procedure, and we sold off 8.5 acres of mill property to a grow operation. We had a public meeting where people disagreed with selling it, or actually it was rent to lease at that point, of February of 2018. 2019, the day I was brought in and sworn into the council. They had harvested their first crop. 2021, Boise sued the city, and the judge pointed out that the sale was null and void because of procedure. There's been a number of legal things going by. My question is, how much money has the city put into legal fees on this growth? And how much money has the growth operation through its rent or mortgage payments paid back to the city? It almost appears that not only have we lost the case, which is now an appeal, we owe their attorneys as of September of 2021, $100,000. Obviously, our lawyers cost money also. So how much money have we spent in legal fees, preparation of this property? How much rent have we collected? The permits and taxes they have paid by credit card. So the question is, how much money has the city collected versus how much have we spent on it? Thank you.
It's an appeal, so we can't really answer part of that, but I don't know the rest of it. Okay, so I don't know the answer. Anybody else? Okay. Any other visitor comments? Please come up, state your name for the record, and keep to the 3 minutes or less. Okay. None on Zoom? All right, we'll go ahead on to our first item, which is the semi-annual report. Michael B. Roya.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Michael.
Happy New Year to the new council, and thank you for being here with you guys this afternoon and go through a semi-annual report that'll cover July 1st to December 31st of 2022. And being as it is a new year and we have new faces, new council, I wanted to kind of just go into a brief summary and history of our building program. So St. Helens started regulating structures for fire safety in the early 1800s. They wrote their own code into the into ordinance in 1956, which was not uncommon throughout Oregon, led to an unpredictable regulatory environment. And so the Builders Associations went to the Senate and to the state Senate and said, give us some consistency. So they passed House Bill or Senate Bill, 73, and this created the Oregon State Building Codes Administration and Enforcement uniform throughout the entire state, which includes us. From there, the state delegates the program's authority out to local municipalities. That'll include counties if the cities don't want it, and the state takes it if the counties don't want it. We renewed our program this year, early in January of 2022. We currently are providing the structural, plumbing, and mechanical programs for the city of St. Helens. And the county, Columbia County, actually provides the electrical program throughout the county, which includes St. Helens. And any questions on how the program works? Outside of that, we take in permit applications that require plan reviews. We'll get them out and issue permits for all the different structures that are going on inside the city limits. Moving on to workload. We have 3.4 full-time employees. In this last period, we issued 246 permits. And I apologize, my report had a typo in it. 341 plan reviews was total plan reviews associated with building permits, but only 169 of those were performed within the building division. So there's other divisions that look at those plans. So that was a little bit of a typo on my part, and I apologize for that. 987 inspections were performed. And there's, like I said, more information on that in the detailed report. You can look at the different tables that are provided there. Part of our workload also includes intergovernment agreements, IGAs, that we have with Columbia City, our neighboring city, and with Columbia County. With Columbia City, we provide pretty much their program for them. We get notified that an application for a permit has come in. We go into gear and provide plan review, inspection, and building official services at a rate of 75% of the total permit cost, as per the agreement in our IGA. Columbia County's IGA is a reciprocal IGA and which is more based on the idea of having resources. We're a rural area, so the number of qualified individuals that can perform these inspections and plan reviews is limited. So we share resources between the various communities to be able to maintain services. One dependency that we have on that IGA is they employ an A-level plumbing inspector. I won't go deep into the details of what that means, but that we utilize that A-level plumbing inspector for the commercial plumbing inspections that occur within our city. Our ability to use that through the IGA is critical for our services that we provide. And likewise, if somebody's sick or there's vacation needed or there's an influx of workload, we can utilize those resources through those IGAs. And I included some statistical information on Columbia City permit data. They issued 40 permits. We performed 168 inspections for them, 15 plan reviews with a total revenue of $8,771. And likewise on Columbia County permitting data, they performed 18 inspections, 6 plan reviews, and came out a total expenditure of $29,10. Moving on to, sorry, I should have prompted you. Go to electronic plan review services. Couple slides forward, sorry. All right, electronic plan review services. As you may or may not know, for the new council folks, we've been doing e-permitting through the state software program since 2020, which allows electronic permitting services for our customers to go online and apply and pay for their permits online. And in this last year, we've also implemented digital plan review services. We've implemented them. They're going forward. We have them available to our customers at this point. We've got the building blocks in place. And so now we're trying to get feedback, and I do get a lot of feedback from customers, a lot from staff as well, on little things that we need to provide for customers. It's about getting information out there to help them get trained up on how to submit documents and how to use these new tools. So we're providing those documents to them, and likewise on in-house training staff, not only in the building division, but outside of in other departments as well, to continue to use the tools and gain experience with them. As we move forward with the electronic plan review services, in this next, in the upcoming term, we're going to be looking to get a reimbursement, which we talked about in the previous report, from the state for the services that we've, for our implementation costs that we've provided or that we've incurred through the services. And moving on to the building codes division. So like I talked about earlier, building codes division is the state agency that delegates the authority to us to enforce building codes within our jurisdiction. And so I just want to include a little bit of update from them. In a previous report, they had opened up enrollment for a specialized plumbing inspector course because they do provide all the training within the state for the various credentials that we need. And this certification is in demand. It will help us provide more services within our jurisdiction, less dependence that we talked about it on the county for the services that they provide. And I wish I could be reporting to you today that we are starting classes in January, like BCB said, but they had to, for whatever reasons, postpone until August. I'm sure it has to do with staffing. They've been struggling with that a little bit, as many have. On the code cycle, every 3 years, the building codes are updated. Right now, in October 1st of this year, the Oregon Structurally Specialty Code, that's basically regulates every building except for 1 and 2 family dwellings, was updated, as well as the mechanical code. They were adopted October 1st, but because of a publishing delay, the enforcement date's been moved to April 1st of 2023. We did get notification in December that the books for the code that was adopted in October was available, so put in the order, and those will be to our offices soon. The residential code and the plumbing code are also in those cycles as well. Right now, they're still under the proposed amendments and going through public comment period for those 2 codes. And they are on schedule to be effective adopted October 1st of 2023. Another one we've been following closely is House Bill 2415. This is what has been driving all the electronic plan review and electronic permitting services. So we've been listening in on the Rules Advisory Committee from the state, and participating to a light degree just to make sure they don't. We've implemented a lot of things. I don't want to have to backtrack too much to come out with any additional rules around it. So trying to listen in and be prepared for what they've got. There should be a draft coming of the language. I just sat in on a meeting earlier today, and to that end, we are very much in alignment with House Bill 2415. So we should not experience any rift as new rules come out, or as they did come out with the planning rules. And moving on to some of the projects that you'll see around town. So the high school renovation project, the primary structural and trade permits have been issued. One thing I wanted to point out on a project of this size is that there's several cycles going back and forth of what they're proposing to do, and we make code comments and then back and forth. That takes a lot of time. So we worked with the district in raising the approval and authorizing work as it became approved. So it allowed them to start on the underground work before the vertical work had been completely vetted in and approved. And so just something I wanted to point out in terms of the size of this project. We don't have to utilize that all that often, but on one like this, it's very appropriate to keep them moving. But at the same time, still keeping everything going through the proper cycles to get everything approved. Broadleaf Arbor apartments. We've got foundations down. They are going vertical. You probably see this on a regular basis as you're driving by. They are starting to come into finishes on their main community building and on some of the first family housing buildings. Columbia Hills Retirement. This was a tragic event that happened not long ago. We've been working over the past couple months with the owner and the contractor to regain occupancy back to two portions of the building and get displaced residents back into their homes. Burger King is got a grade fill permit. You might have heard of them tinking around up there on the rocks a bit.
Yep.
And so they've got some grade fill permits. They've got a grade fill permit issued. Their building plans are still under review. And in fact, we just received a copy of their new latest set in our office today. CRF&R building, the Columbia River Fire and Rescue Admin Building. This is up on 4th Street, or I'm sorry, 3rd Street there. And they are doing an interior model of their existing building. And you can see in the photos, they are to their sheetrock base. And I'll be going out there this afternoon for an inspection, actually. Sand Island. This is the Sand Island campground. They're installing some new cabins and a picnic structure or assembly structure on there. The foundations have been approved. We haven't been back over there since then, but if you do take a glance across there, you can start to see the structures are going vertical out there. 922 Cowlitz. This was an enforcement case from 2019, which council declared a nuisance and also had Public Works board that building up. That building has been purchased, and there is a new owner who has issued permits to repair that home. And so I wanted to bring that one to your attention because that has been one that's been sitting in the community for a while that has been needing to get fixed up or at least get some attention to it, and wanted to notify you guys that was occurring. 12th Street Apartments. This is just right across the street from the Red Apple grocery store. They've got a grade fill permit issued as well for them to start digging and getting prepped up for their foundations. Their building permits are still under review, and but we are getting really close to issuance for them as well. And then just a few of the 1 and 2 family dwellings around town. That's Elk Ridge on there on the left, and Forest Trail is the one up on the right hand there. And the duplex in the center is one that you'll see off of Second Street, just down the road from us here. And so beyond that, we're gonna be keeping up with the day-to-day services. Like I said, we're gonna be putting in for our reimbursement for the IGA with the state. We've got trainings coming up with the OSS for the OSSC and OMSC adoption. So we're gonna be waiting for them to get us dates out for that so we can get those done and recertified again. And we're also going to be looking at doing some updates on our website in regards to information on electronic plan review and permitting services. Any questions?
No?
No, it looks good. I talked with John last week, especially about the high school program development. It's just really great that you're able to have flexibility with them, because I know they're pulling, their hair out to the contractor with delivery issues concerning things. So it's just nice to have that kind of flexibility. And just a note, since you're going to be followed by the library folks at the old the CFR Columbia CRFR building, former St. Helens City Library, which brought us to this town. We were looking for a place that had a community library, and so it's nice to see that it's being used. But that's library.
Nice.
Well, you guys been pretty busy out there. Yes, and I see lots of action still happening. 15 St. Helens, I understand a couple duplexes going in there.
Yeah.
Hatfield pouring up on the Elk Ridge right now.
Yeah.
Today, so, yeah. Looks like you're still staying busy, that's good.
Yeah.
Look on that plumbing.
Thank you, guys.
Yes.
Take care.
Okay, next item, library 5-year strategic plan discussion, library director Suzanne Bishop and library board member Ellen Jacobson.
Close enough.
Jacobson.
That works.
Jacobson.
Sounds fancy though.
Well, thanks for taking the time to meet with us. We really appreciate it. So as you know, the board and Director Bishop are doing a review of the strategic plan. Is Rachel still here? Rachel's been giving us lots of guidance and leadership on it, so we appreciate that. So it's pretty timely because apparently it's 2023 now, and our current plan expired in 2022. So it's time to be looking at the strategy. And then we also have our new director, so it's going to bring perspective to everything. And libraries are evolving. I mean, you just mentioned where the library was and how different it probably was. So it's a good time to look and see, is our library fit for needs? Does it need to adapt, change, etc. And talked about the riverfront development. The community is changing, it's growing. What does the library need to change to fit that? Okay, so we're gonna have output will be a refresh strategy. It'll be a 5-year horizon again. So that takes us to, anybody want to do the math? 23 to
28.
Yeah.
And then we want to be careful to balance it between like really aspirational goals, but also being pragmatic. We want pie in the sky, but I don't think you're going to give us all the money for that. We're going to look at what experience do our patrons want to have. How are we going to partner with other groups? How do we support the community? And then think about the people and the processes that make the library go. So the key to this is stakeholder engagement, and that's where you guys come in. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit, but first, Director Bishop to talk through the current strategy, work plan, etc.
Thank you. So I'd like to start with the mission statement because it really addresses the foundational principles that a public library and our public library use to serve our community. And that is that we're dedicated to providing optimal access to the best vocational, educational, and recreational information to the people of the greater St. Helens area in order to promote and encourage lifelong learning, self-development, and life enhancement. So we welcome all comers at our library. We seek to serve everyone who walks into our library to the extent that we can. We do that in a variety of ways, and I'll use the current strategic plan to give you an idea of context or the sort of the foundation that we use. So lifelong learning was goal number one. How do we offer options and experiences and items that help support growing needs of our community from birth to, grown-ups, adults, old age people. I don't know what else to say. How do we do that? Well, we have a youth librarian. We just started doing our kids programs again. They had 8 little ones crawling around on the floor with their babies program yesterday and a pile of toddlers today. So what are we doing there? We're teaching them literacy. We're teaching them how to engage with materials, how to engage with information, what to do, how do you hold a book, all of those kinds of things. Teens, they're pretty challenging to connect with. So we offer them lots of opportunities. And one of the really important things that we do for teens is we are just a safe space for them. We are a place where they can come after school, they can talk with their friends, they can learn, they can do their homework, they can engage with each other and with the library staff and with other members of the community. That is a really important thing for that age group. And then we're enhancing learning. We have a great partnership with the schools and with some local preschools as well, to enhance what they support what they're doing, provide our resources, engage with their resources, and we do that at the schools, we do that at the preschools, and of course we want them to come to the library as well. But to that point, we are a community and cultural center, and also we exist outside the building. And I think that's a really important part of our mission and of what we do for our community. We do go to schools. We do go to the senior center. We do go to other places outside the library. We're still providing those important services, but we're doing that, we're taking it where people are, and inviting them to come back to us. So promoting reading for all ages, that's reading, that's reading Google. That's reading a book. That's reading an online database. That's reading anything. We encourage people to read and experience literature and information in as many ways as we can afford to do and as we do. And then information resources and training. That is one of the things that we find is of particular interest and importance to folks who come into the library who don't have a computer at home or don't have access to the internet in a way that allows them to do things like some training that we offer on databases, training for certificates. We offer help putting together resumes. We offer them help applying for jobs. As you probably know, a lot of jobs these days, you don't take a piece of paper into the business, you have to do that stuff online. All of those things we help our community with. Access to library services, we stopped fining overdue fines in May. And the reason we did that was because those fines were often a hindrance. If a person comes and borrows a book, they don't have perhaps the means to pay the fines, those people aren't going to come back to the library. They won't be able to come back to the library and use those services. We serve everyone. That's one of the ways that we can do that, by eliminating that barrier. As it says here, evaluate open hours annually. We have done that. Our aspiration is to be open on Sundays as well and expand service on Saturdays. That's another budget challenge that we are facing, but it is something that we feel is really important. Not everybody can get to the library Monday through Friday. Not everybody can get to the library just in those few hours that we're open on Saturday. So what can we do to make the library available as much as possible? Identifying underserved audiences, that means, that's again, we're going out to folks to help them with all of the different kinds of services that we just talked about. And then we're always improving our online presence. We, thanks to a donation from a local individual, we were able to reinstate our membership or subscription to Ancestry.com, which has a very broad interest. There's a lot of interest in the community, and we couldn't afford to do that otherwise. So we are doing some work to find additional sources to help support those things that we know are of interest and are important to our community. And then communications, as always, we're expanding and increasing the effectiveness of how we reach out to our patrons and to the rest of the community, inviting people to come in, as well as reminding folks why we're here. So our aspirational goals in 2022 to 2024 city work plan, how we fit into there. We eliminated overdue fines, yay. Career service between St. Helens and Scappoose, that has, there's many moving parts. We're still working towards that goal. That's not going to get done this year. There's a lot of, we'll be collaborating with the other libraries in the system. The idea is that we will be able to move items around so that if you borrowed a book from the Scappoose Library, it can be sent to the St. Helens Library. You don't need to go to Clascanite or Scappoose or wherever to borrow that book. Again, that's aspirational. We continue to work on that. That's a lot of moving pieces. Of course, we need to provide sustainable funds for the makerspace. Currently, Alan Hansen, who is our makerspace tech extraordinaire, is funded on, his position is grant funded. That funding ends at the end of the year, and we need to find a way to not only keep him and support that a really important program. It is growing like, it's growing really amazingly. He's doing one class a week, always packed. He has appointments and walk-ins almost all of the time when he's open, and open hours that really, we see lots of families, homeschooling families, and folks that walk in and say, oh, what's the makerspace, and wander over there during that. So really growing an interest, and obviously a really important way that we support the community. Expanding hybrid programs. This grew out of COVID, and ways that we can support people who can't be here in person either because of health reasons or because it's not convenient or they don't have a way to be able to come to the library. So as we expand our programming, and we're just going to start really expanding our adult services programming this spring, we're giving people the opportunity to experience it from a distance as well as being in person. I talked about digital library resources. We're continuing to expand those. And then rebranding of the library, again, aspirational. We'll put this strategic plan together and that'll be part of it. So just a quick couple of things. I think I talked about children. I talked about makerspace. Thank you very much. I think I'm just going to fly through this one too, Kathy. I talked about collaboration with the school district, outdoor and other programs. We work a lot with Shauna at Parks, at Recreation. And doing, again, things outdoors, things with the Parks Department here and there, at schools, at their community center, lots of different ways, again, that we reach out to the community. Mostly those are kids, but we also work with adults. You may have heard of our genealogy conference. We had national participation last year, 2 years ago, we do it biannually. We do it every other year. We had someone from the Library of Congress and some other really prestigious presenters. And then, as I said, people from all over the country participating. Because again, we offered it as a hybrid. People could Zoom in as well as being here in person. And then as part of our regional reciprocal library memberships, our patrons can go to Multnomah County, Washington County. They can go to Clascanite. They can go to any of the libraries in our region and get a library card, reciprocal card. So we're able to offer that opportunity. And it's a very important piece of how we reach out to the community. Library of Things. I hope you've heard about the Library of Things. We have 158 awesome things at the library that you can borrow. Everything from I saw some robotics things go out the door. We have an air fryer with a pickleball set, all kinds of different things. Another way for folks to engage with the community and learning. Our Wi-Fi hotspots are always out the door. People use those during, we've noticed especially during the school year, folks are using those at home, but of course we encourage use for, recreation or anything else that they might, entertainment that they might want to do. Our ukulele orchestra, I think, is in its 10th year. Very active participation. I think there's 25 or 30 folks that usually show up on a Saturday to play their ukulele. That's fun. And then we continue to collaborate with Arts Guild and Columbia County Museum Association. Come by and look at the cool musical instruments display that we have at the library right now. All right,
Okay.
you're up.
All right. Next steps. So we're doing two things. One is lots of conversations. So talking with people, engaging with them, because you get a lot more information when you do it one-on-one or with a small group. Then we're also doing a survey. And so there's going to be a survey specific to city employees and then a community-wide survey. So get information those two ways. So once we have all that, we've wrangled it, looked for common themes, issues that are coming up, et cetera, put together a draft plan. We'll refine it, do our action steps, and the aim is to have it formally adopted in May. Okay. Okay, the next slide, Kathy. Okay, so here's the questions that we're having in our meetings as well as with the survey. So the first one's always fun, because I've had a number of great meetings with some city employees already, people have met with the senior center, et cetera. And this one's always great, it sparks the conversation. What are the 2 words? It's often 3 words or 4 words that pop to mind when you think about the library. Then we go into, how about you personally? Do you have a library card? And it's okay if you don't. I found that, sometimes people are like, oh, I don't. That's okay. But if you do go to the library, what do you use the library services for? And that's a great question too, because we find out what people think is more popular and then can correlate it with the data they have to say what's matching up or not. The next one's a really good one in terms of what don't they currently use the library for? What would they like to look to it for? So what are the things that they think a library should be? And people have different views on that. And then this one's if, money was no object, it was a perfect world, we could do anything what we wanted, what would the perfect library look like? And this is where we get the aspirational stuff. The next one's about partnership, because Suzanne mentioned the partnerships we already have. We can't do this without partnerships. And that's with city departments, that's with county organizations, other libraries, state, national groups, et cetera. So it's all about partnership opportunities. And then communication, because that's always a real issue. How do you communicate effectively? And what are the best ways to do that? Okay, so this is where we're looking to you guys for your help. So to go out and let community members know that we want their input. So if you can advocate for that. We also want to get your input on the plan. So I think Kathy, it's the next slide. Yeah, so myself, I'll follow up with each of you with an email today or tomorrow and either set up a meeting with you guys or another board member will. So one to go through those questions and get your input. And we'll have the survey will be coming out as well soon.
So the Survey Monkey will make available at the library. Our partner organizations, they're gonna pass out along as well. It's the 6 questions that we will be asking in person of everyone. We'll do our best to get that as far out into the community as possible. And again, gather that information and choose the common themes, just use that information as we are developing the plan.
We have a little flyer with the QR code. Yeah, so we'll have that like in City Hall in various locations as well. So really, let's open it up if you guys have any questions or you want to discuss anything, your input, thoughts.
One of the things that I was curious about when you're talking about that is the demand still there for hybrid services, and how are you looking at that? Because I feel like after COVID now, a lot of us are back to business as usual. Are you seeing that in the library also?
Yes and no, but I will say a couple of things about that. We still have desire for online services or for online services. And I think that goes to convenience. A lot of people are saying, oh, I'd really like to do that, but if I don't have to take the 20 minutes going each direction to participate, yeah, I'll be happy to do that. And then, some folks have other limitations, travel, transportation or whatever. So I would say that the interest in continuing to do online has been consistent since things have loosened up. And I think for those reasons primarily. And we'll continue, so that goes to, we'll continue to do hybrid, who knows, maybe in perpetuity. I think the world's changed in some ways in that department. So we always want people to come to the library, but to the point of, we want to reach people where they are too. We want to make sure that we have the technology, we have the opportunity to provide that service that way.
And internally, have you looked at like staffing? Is that something that you can continue to provide and, capacity for staffing?
We do both.
Hybrid, yeah.
Absolutely. Primarily because the same, we'll use the same staff is providing those services in both ways. And in fact, I can't think of a situation where we have provided an in-person opportunity and an online opportunity separately or a hybrid separately. So, I mean, we've got lots of ideas and we've got lots of ways that we want to reach out to the community and programs we'd like to provide, but at this point, that capacity is there. Right.
Any other questions? We look forward to the survey, meeting with some board members and then helping out with this plan.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your time. Welcome. Welcome. Thanks, Ken.
Okay, our next item on the agenda, right of way overview and defining of budding for row vacations, our city planner Jacob Gretchen.
Yeah, we're talking about sushi today.
I like the beard.
Thank you. Yeah, it's going crazy, just letting him over. Opposite of how it's been for the last several years. So we got a couple new counselors and welcome. And in government, we use all these weird terms. And there are terms that we use in the practice of governance, which you wouldn't normally use in the same context outside of that. And so I wanted to introduce some of this because first day on the job, you're gonna tackle some of these issues. So we wanted to talk about what row is, and that's right of way. It's not salmon eggs for sushi.
That's not OED.
I'm not getting into spelling. Yeah. I appreciate the teacher coming out there. And it's right way, not, hey, I'll get to it right away. So the next slide, there are some definitions in our code. And I won't read those, but basically that they're for your reading pleasure if you'd like. Basically, it's a swath of land for a public purpose. And as you can see by these definitions, the public purpose is very broad: streets, roads, highways, bridges, alleys, sidewalks, trails, paths, public easements, roads, crosswalks, railroad, electric transmission lines, oil, gas pipelines, etc. So very broad. Public purpose is very broad. And the city has a responsibility to manage their rights of way for the benefit of the public. So that's why that is why you get to make certain decisions on these matters, and why we get into the nitty-gritty details when we're talking about right of way. So there are a variety of ways that right of way can be obtained, and I'll just illustrate some of those really quickly on some of the slides. They can be dedicated just by a document that says, well, this is dedicated, can be required of a land use decision. For example, if you build a new supermarket and the right of way is too narrow and our standard calls for a wider one, we can potentially ask for more of that. A subdivision is a typical way we get right of way. You want to have streets that accesses homes, you can have right of way for it. And of course, condemnation is when you force it. That's not as often used, but it can be. Now, when right of way is returned, there's not a lot of ways to do that. And then we're talking about the vacation. So again, all these weird terms we use. So does that mean we're going to Disneyland? Well, no, the vacation process isn't fun like Disneyland unless you compare it to standing in lines, but it is a necessary part of one of the many things that we do here. The vacation is returning the right of way to the private interest. So let's just look at a couple of very basic examples. So on the left, let's say we have this parcel of land, or really two parcels of land divided by that little dashed line there. And you have First Street, which is north and south on the left side, and then you see that blue stub street on the right side. So then the right exhibit takes that northerly parcel, cuts it up into 5 pieces. And we got to have a street to access those pieces. And so Benson Avenue in the yellow in this example was dedicated to allow that street to go through there. So if we go to the next slide. So on the left, this is an example of where you had that first subdivision, and then later, let's say a couple years later, the 5 lots in the south side were created. Now I put these two side by side to understand a little bit how right-of-way vacations can work, because you have to determine where that right of way goes to upon vacation. So on the left, the entire Benson Avenue right of way came from the lots, the parent property that created those lots on the north side. And so let's say lot 4 on the north side of Benson Avenue, if they were to successfully vacate Benson Avenue, that entire width would go to lot 4. Now, the example on the right is more typically of what we see in the vacations for St. Helens. And it's just because it's the more common phenomenon where everything was subdivided at once. In that case, it meets down the middle, and you can see lot 7 on the south of that Benson Avenue right of way where it's a slightly lighter shade of yellow. In that case, that would be a portion of right of way that would be vacated to that lot. So we have standards to determine what size of rights of way that we need. We have a subdivision where I put a lot of shading into the area that is not public right of way. And I use this subdivision because the sidewalks are new and bright and shiny, and so it really added the contrast. We have a variety of street standards, and the street standards help determine what width we're looking for. The standard on the bottom is our local street standard, a big swath of 34 feet of road asphalt and some sidewalks. And that's what you can see in this aerial photo. You can see the cars parked there. If this was what we call a higher classified street, a collector, at least a new one built to our standards, you'd see some more greenery within the right of way. So we have standards to help determine what kind of right of way that we want. Now, in St. Helens, not all cities have the opportunity to experience many right of way vacations. But St. Helens is one of those where, we've seen some. In my 15 plus years here, with the one that you're going to see tonight, for me, that would be number 24. And there was many before me, and there probably will be many after. And so why? What's going on? The exhibit on the left is an illustration of the original St. Helens subdivision. This subdivision is fairly unique for our city because it is something that came from the 19th century. Most of our subdivisions were 20th century in the 1900s or now or into the century after that. But we do have some 1800s subdivisions. This one, of course, is the one that created St. Helens. The issue at the time is, well, let's create a grid. That makes sense, creates connectivity. That's all good things. But when you create a grid and you ignore what's happening actually on the land, it creates some interesting issues. So compare the yellow-orange cross. That is the St. Helens Armory. And notice the grid on the exhibit to the left around that armory. When you look at the aerial photo, and this is just from April of last year, and you look to the right and to the north or above the armory, you don't see that grid. You don't see the streets. And why? Well, because there's canyons and wetlands. So there are instances where a right-of-way was what we call platted, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And that is an opportunity to vacate. So that's a crash course in rights of way and vacations. Oh no, wait, I have one more slide. So let's look at some examples just to help reinforce what I just explained to you. So this is a map I made way back in 2011 or so, and then our aerial photo from April with the rights of way that are shown. And this is at the Lewis and Clark School. So 9th Street used to come into Columbia Boulevard at an angle. And it was before my time. Today, there's barricades, But once upon a time, apparently that was a hot spot for hot rodders because of the slope. It was a good place to catch some air. Now, although that results in great pleasure, especially from the youth, it's not necessarily in the public's interest to have hot rodding on public streets. So this street was closed. The city worked it out with the school to rebuild the street. So now it comes at more of a right angle. And this is actually, the map is from a letter we sent to them in 2011. We finally got the right of way dedicated in 2018. Sometimes things take a little bit. So that was an example where it was dedicated by deed. There's some vacations that you can also see if you looked at the details really closely. And I'll have to point these out to you. But if you notice this little bite taken out of the right of way, that was an area that was vacated back in 2010, a long time ago. And then you notice how this is narrower than this. That was an area that was vacated in 2017. So hopefully, 2017. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of context, because we have a public hearing on a right-of-way vacation tonight. So we wanted you to have a little bit of context so you weren't going into that too cold. Now, to make matters even more complicated, we're asking for the council to consider interpretation of a particular element of the statutes. And that has to do with how we look at the word abutting. And Kathy, really the only thing I need for these ones is that exhibit there. Now, this is a question that I posed. I think it was here when I first started. I had some experience with vacations in the other jurisdictions I worked for, but nowhere near to the level that I've seen with St. Helens. And so my predecessor, Skip Baker, I'm sure I had the same question. I can kind of remember that. Well, what does abutting mean? For the purposes of right-of-way vacations. And back then, the determination was that the area that abuts the side of the portion to be vacated is what counts, because that is what can be returned to the abutting property owner. Now, and that hasn't really been an issue until last year. Last year, we had a proposed vacation. Now, it's one that the council never saw. And so we were unable to ask the council this question formally before. It was a vacation proposed at the intersection of First and Columbia Boulevard. And there were a variety of issues. The applicant decided not to pursue it with the council after the planning commission recommended denial of it. But one of the issues that came up was whether or not abutting applies to the side or should it apply to the point. The reason that matters, there's a couple. One, it relates to the city accepting an application for a vacation matter. And two, in order for the jurisdiction to approve the vacation, we must determine, there's a few things we must determine, but one of those is that 100% of abutting property owners have consented. And so the question here is, would lot 2 and 3 apply, or should lot 4 apply as well? Now, the planning commission, in their recommendation for the right-of-way vacation that you're going to see tonight, one of the conclusions they drew was that the city's local, or the city's development codes definition of abutting should apply to the vacation. And this is where things get really squirrely. So primarily, we rely on state law to determine how we navigate all this vacation stuff. And the state law says, you know, whether or not we have the consent obtained, whether or not notice has been given, and if the public interest will be prejudiced. What the state law does not do well is it doesn't define abutting really at all. And so the planning commission, they were uncomfortable with this point fact, and they wanted to really reinforce it by making that finding. The city council is the legislative body. It's your code, and so you could interpret the code. And that's why we're bringing this question up to you. Now that we have this recommendation from the commission, we want to hear your stance on that matter. We talked to our legal counsel about it last year when it came up for the other matter, and they noted that we didn't have to apply it in that sense. But we also had some other materials put into the record that provided some ways that the courts may look at abutting, although it wasn't in the context of a vacation. And so what we're going to ask for tonight is how the council feels about that. And one of the provisions, as I mentioned, is whether or not public interest will be prejudiced by the vacation. So is it bad for the public good, essentially? And so we're looking for a finding that the local definition should apply for the public prejudice, for the public interest to not be prejudiced, excuse me, it's very wordy. And ultimately, this is something that we should codify. For some of you who may remember us talking about our planning department goals, having a local right-of-way vacation policy is one of the things on our checklist. So pros and cons. Now, if I was a neighbor, if I owned lot number 4, yeah, you know, I'd probably want to have a say that's very close to my neighborhood and close to home. So I could see that from that perspective. Rick may be the only one left from the business-friendly discussion days. Patrick,
I don't think so.
yeah, so time flies, doesn't it? So it got me thinking about that, you know, that era. And because that interpretation could make it a little more arduous, because it's just more properties that you have to get consent from. So I thought about those two things. There's another method, well, there's a couple methods to vacate. One is getting a petition where you get the neighbors to consent. There's another method where the city initiates on motion. Typically, that's used for a public purpose. And what that says, if the council can pass it unless an abutting property owner challenges it for damages based on devaluation. So it could potentially put the city in a slightly greater risk. But those are pretty rare. And I think a challenge, as long as it's a reasonable request, are probably rarer. Planning Commission brought it up. We wanted to make sure we got it to the council. I did look at some examples earlier today, and I couldn't find the only one that I could find where it really explicitly stated it. And I looked at Salem, Portland, Bend, a couple others, but one of them, Warrenton, did note in their application, it did note the point. So there you go.
Anybody else confused?
I'm gonna ask you, we need clarification here.
Yeah, so what's the point of all this? I guess,
What are the pros and cons maybe, or?
yeah, so it sounds to me like, and this is just a layman coming out of me, that there's certain lots that want to vacate this for parking.
Now, this is conceptual. This is an actual proposal. This is just an example of the type of thing we can see. And it gets into the nitty gritty of law. Which sometimes we get to do.
But it's a public right of way, right? And they're asking that to be vacated so they can use it as private property.
Yeah, exactly. And in this case, the example we have tonight. We have one of these lot fours that abuts the area to be vacated, but only by a point. And they did not provide the consent. Whereas in that example, lots 2 and 3, we do have because they abut by the side. And we didn't mandate consent from lot 4 because of this long-term practice of focusing on the side. So the planning commission was concerned enough about touching by a point mattering for the purposes of processing these, that they made a finding in the recommendation to council. And so now we get to ask you for a ruling on that.
And so when you reached out to legal, what I see is that it would still be considered abutting by our code. Is that correct?
Yeah, legal says we're not necessarily compelled for the purposes of vacations to apply the point. And so based on that, okay, well, the planning commission is concerned enough about it. It doesn't mean we can't get a ruling from the council. And so until the point that we can amend our code to clarify, we at least have that ruling going forward.
I mean, I can understand where the concern would come from, even if it's not directly in front, that utilization in front of that lot could still conflict with that lot. So, I mean, I think that.
And that goes on to state in our code here too. That work with actually starts like in 3 in the 17.1601. Where people, we need to be clarification that they're not getting blocked off.
Right, like
From
what
that-
the
from
utilization
there.
is.
That's the whole point of checking the whole thing, and I know for lot 4 on, because that's similar to what we're looking at tonight.
Mhm, yeah.
Their only concern, 'cause I actually have property right up the hill, and even though they didn't give consent, is that they would have at least a chance for right of way if they need to get their truck in and out of their property. Because of the way the topography is for that, there's a cliff on the opposite side, and that's the only way to reach the back of their property.
Concern for lot 1 too,
You know, that's the same.
Yeah. Yes, even more so for lot 4 though, because of cliff, it's Shadow Canyon, Terry Wademeyer is who owns that.
Yeah, luckily the mayor's been through this, so he has experience there. Yeah.
But what the real question is the abutment.
So,
The abutment.
so really it's,
Because we have a planning commission, proactive planning commission, and we had actually, it came up in our hearing, planning commission Kowski didn't show up as a planning commissioner, he showed up as a citizen and said, my property abuts this property. And challenged this.
So the question is,
so the question is, should our local definition explicitly apply? If it does, then we can go with the point. And as kind of the Band-Aid approach, we're asking if the council agrees with that you believe the public interest will be prejudiced if we do not apply the local definition. And that's what the planning commission's main thing was. Well, we have our local definition. We really should apply it. And the statute,
At the state level, it read how vaguely,
it just doesn't define it.
they find it all.
Yeah, and so that's why, just based on how vacations work. That applies to the side because that's where person can obtain right away.
Because there's also been a discrepancy that I know of people out there who say, actually, we own each citizen owns up to the center of the street, you're just asking for your property back, because that has been a long-standing, maybe myth, maybe not, it came from somewhere.
Yeah, and in the definition slide, and this came from the League of Oregon Cities, and this describes it well. So a right of way is public property and held in trust by the government for the benefit of the public. So it did come from private property and held in trust rather than being real estate in its normal sense.
So where I would challenge that, one more, just where I would challenge that argument is if the property in front of my property and you vacate yours, even if I give you consent, you still cannot legally get mine in front of me without me giving you full ownership or consent of that property. Even if I do give you consent. So if I'm a buddy, then I should be able to have anything I want or down the street.
That's what I was gonna say, where does the line end?
Because a buddy, completely in the opposite of what the argument is. I should be able to continue on further down the street because my property keeps abutting the next property, the next property,
Yeah.
the next property,
It has to be
the next
defined.
property. But there has to be an endpoint.
I agree, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Counselor.
Okay, so no, I'm glad we're having this discussion, but. So the way I'm seeing this, when you showed us the original subdivision, St. Helens subdivision, okay? Going back that, so. Along any of these, just go, or actually go ahead back to
I think it was
the,
That grid.
Next one back.
Greystone, I think.
well, but just leave this here. I don't think we need to. I wish I would. Oh, thank you. So if we have properties here and they, so. Like in that old St. Helens subdivision thing, and if there wasn't, before there was the right of way. All of these property lines would have been drawn back and met in the center. So that at some point in time, the city came and asked for the right of way for 9th Street.
Yeah, I mean, it was all.
So this was originally owned by the owners of these lots.
In a sense, I mean, it was all done simultaneously.
Yeah, okay, in a sense, all right. So in a way, so it's not, and I think John wants to get.
No.
So what I guess I'm understanding this is I have heard also. Expressed at planning commission meetings too. That if the city, if we're vacating something and. Private property owners are getting property that the city owned, that's like city owned. Then there should be some kind of financial compensation as part of that vacation. But what I'm hearing in a sense is that it really isn't
City owned.
city owned, we're holding it in, as you said, in trust
Of the greater
So-
good.
Yes.
of the greater good, but it's nothing that the city ever gave up a financial,
Or should make.
had a financial interest that we gave up when we first.
And for-
Land reserved for public interest.
Yeah.
For example, like Greystone, they actually vacated the property, the streets there, in order to do a planned development, in order to. Make the best use of properties for the greater good of the public, correct? And then we know for us, we have Jacob's Mountain coming up, where it has 10th, 11th, and part of 12th Street.
Bluff.
Yeah, Jacob's
Yeah.
Bluff.
Terms.
We are gonna be going through the process of doing ourselves, just for the greater good of the best use of property in the future, for whatever it may be. Because we've looked at that. So, yes, I don't know.
So my question is kind of what, or the mayor was just saying, which was that like, if we say, okay, we're gonna like. Absorb this, abutting rule, how far out do we do that then? Like, is that like, I think it needs to be, if we decide to change that or, look into it a little bit more, then it's gonna have to be further defined, right?
Well, it's what abuts the area to be vacated.
And what's the abutting rule? Like, is there a certain distance? I mean, like,
Oh, okay, so there's, Yeah, that's a good question. So in the vacation, there are those that abut or touch. So really, it's, touching by a side and touching by a point. There is what's called the affected area, which is a certain distance from the sides and from the ends. And I think it was 400 feet and 200 feet. That's the affected area. And so in order to successfully submit a petition to vacate, you need 100% of the abutting, which is what we're talking about here, and at least 2/3% of within the affected area. And so, the person a couple lots away may or may not matter, depending on whether or not the petitioner has that 2/3 consent.
Okay, I understand that now.
So I think that's very clear in how the mechanics of the vacation work. It's really, and that's why I created this exhibit, right now it's the green, you want the pink as well.
Okay. That makes sense.
Any other questions for Jacob?
Welcome to the abstract world of land use plan.
So, I will state that though, I mean, I think the abutting owners. Should have a right to appeal. But I also believe the person vacating should have the right to appeal abutting the owner. Not wanting, because we really need to look at this for a greater good, if it doesn't make any sense and it potentially spark some type of growth or be for the greater good of. But just one abutting owner doesn't want it just because they don't like that neighbor. It does happen. But also in the case, it talks about maybe they're blocking a move or something like that if the abutting homeowner, which in that last case that we actually heard as a council. Did have a good enough excuse that there was a bunch of big buildings that were gonna be put on a 2/3 of the property we're trying to get vacated or half of it. 2 sides of 4 sides. And there was a proposal for big blocky buildings and nobody had no recollection of what the person was even planning to do, so. In this case, I know that. I'll share later, but Waymeyer said as long as he could go in and out of there, he would have no problem with signing, but. And people didn't even come to him. So, again, you have people scared of some, or have had interaction with a neighbor that maybe wasn't very pleasant.
So tonight you're gonna hear the vacation and there's gonna be a bunch of details with that. The purposes of putting this on the work session, one, just a quick little 101 on what is a right of way. And to help you start thinking about this issue, because we're gonna ask you to make a decision on this tonight.
I just thought, my point when they abutting was, couldn't the abutting go indefinitely, really? I mean, if you were going by definition of exact touching properties. Well, my property does, well, yeah, so you have.
It's the right of.
About your property,
It's a-
you have interest too.
It's abutting the area to be vacated.
Yeah, definitely.
So in this case, the dashed area.
Well, it just gives the one neighbor the right, because I abut his property. Abutting indefinitely.
Abutting the portion to be vacated, portion to be vacated.
So. We can legally clean up code, is what you're saying, if we want us to.
Well. We're asking for that finding, that way we can incorporate that into future staff
The
reports.
state is not there.
Yeah, and based on that, we would amend the code. When the time is right.
That would definitely be, part of my argument would be that the abutting should at least, they don't need to consent, but should have the right to appeal any decision. Or. Because sometimes they just don't want to do it just because. Doesn't benefit me. There are those people out there who are just ornery and don't care about the greater good. We live in a world of 7 billion people. All right. Thank you, Jacob. All right, let's review the leak adjustment request for Forest Park Apartments Unit 11. I'm Walsh.
All right, this is a good introduction, section has a little bit of everything. The purpose of having work sessions is to,
Council Berkeley. Get it on the floor. I've got an item.
sorry.
Yeah.
Sure, in hand, just can't stop.
Can't stop you trying to, no, I'm just reviewing the different, this is a really good introductory work session, we got a lot of.
Appreciate it.
You know, the purpose of having work sessions and regular meetings is the work sessions where we kind of hash out the details, we're talking about, you know, problem solving. We don't make a lot of decisions in the work session, but we're talking about issues, getting informed as a group, and hear information and come to the regular meeting for action. And, you know, there are some more day-to-day kinds of administrative consensus types of issues we do make in work sessions, but generally things that are going to go to action will be a work session item that goes to the evening meeting, and then we get decisions at that level. But yeah, reports from our, for instance, today we had a report from the building division here, and that's all of our departments twice a year give reports, at least twice a year, give reports to the council rather than having every meeting getting a report. So it's not you're not here till midnight every time. It was more concentrated, more meaningful. Leak adjustments are one of those administrative types of things that we get from time to time. There's administrative policies that let staff handle leak adjustments up to $1,000. In this situation, this is a leak request for more than 1,000. That's why you're seeing it. Forest Park Apartments, they had 2 months of billing. A lot of times they don't know there's a leak, especially when it's outside of their residence and in front of the meter where it's just running in the yard or into a ditch and blowing away. You know, this $120 bill normally is, you know, $2,500. And we know that the water rate, base rate, consumption rate is one aspect of the rate. There's also this sewer rate, which the sewer is tied to the consumption of water. So we'll waive the sewer consumption because that water never hit the sewer. Okay, we'll just, you know, we'll waive that off. And then it's 50% over the consumption is waived. So the owner's still paying some. But in this case, it's merely a, you know, regular. We're asking for a $5,000 credit for these 2 months where there was a pretty substantial leak outside of this residence, and they're required to go in, get it fixed, show us proof that they have it fixed, and typically the council adjusts it off when we know that it's legitimate, because there are issues of tampering that from time to time that we have to kind of what a normal bill was. You know, we'll go back and look at history and what their normal cycle is, and we'll make it that. And, so that's what's before you tonight. There's a request to $5,091.60 2-month period.
That's a big leak.
So that leak went on for 2 months and no one noticed it?
We don't know because it's a
2 months?
either it's summer and your grass is really green, or going into a ditch, or we're straight underground. Bill. Yeah, they got a bill.
They got a bill and they didn't,
And then they got around, you know, went to fix it because they're required to fix it.
right, well, so I mean, they took immediate action, it wasn't like,
Well, I don't know how immediate it was, but it sounded like they fixed it and there was another leak, but
it was 10,
Are they all individually water metered over there in Forest Park?
yeah, I don't know that.
I don't either.
Well,
I
it
think
says unit number 11, so I'm
Yeah,
assuming it's
must be.
one specific person, but that's odd that.
Because usually if there weren't, there would be a bank of a whole row of water meters. Boy. Yeah, I mean, obviously they didn't have the fill up the pool a month ago or 2 months ago.
There's sometimes that's the issue, is that
Yeah, they did not do nothing like that.
we had hoses connected to other houses down the street and it has a things and
So this happens quite often too, you know, I mean, with PVC, all or aging pipes in St. Helens. We get probably these requests at least 4 times a year. That will have somebody pop up, that we actually see, that staff's not able to handle internally.
And most of them aren't this big. This is a big one.
Yeah, this one is a little bit higher than normal. Any questions for John on that?
So it'll go under work session action items tonight.
Okay,
Good luck, John.
yep, update on public safety facility.
All right, thank you. This is something that teasing you with as council for some time that we're working on the project. We got some concern coming forward. I've asked Chief Reed to come join us because he's been that's a part of every conversation I've had with our consultants and with our architects and our owners representative to try to, move this project forward. And
It was on our agenda, our first meeting 2 years ago, so.
Ironic, huh?
Yeah, so.
Full circle.
Good back to them.
so, we've started off with need to build a new police station. And that's kind of scope creep to building the public safety facility. We've added on program elements like a new courthouse, a new council chambers is going to move over there. IT was going to move over there. And, training room, meeting space, which is a lot bigger facility. The police side of it, the house was about half with all the new offices and program elements. And it's about 22,000 square feet in all. And we've had some concerns on that. We're looking to the future, saying, it's the right thing long term to create those spaces, and it's not going to be any less expensive than it is today. But I think at the point where we really need to talk about the next steps with this, the funding, the strategy to fund the facility. And we had an ad hoc advisory committee kind of focusing on the rates and how are we going to pay for this. They looked at a bond measure on property taxes. They looked at a fee on the utility bills. We had like 22 meetings, I believe, that were outreach meetings to try and engage and talk about that, get people's opinions. And they came back with a fee was the most equitable route to go, put it on utility bills. It's going to be charged in an equivalent dwelling unit methodology where each dwelling unit or equivalent dwelling unit, single family 1, duplex 2, duplex 3, 4, each apartment or dwelling unit is going to be charged.
So St. Helens Place Apartments is 204 EDUs.
Correct. And that's new. That's not the way we used to do it. That's the code changes over the past year. We're starting to build that. It's now, so that, we know about how many EDUs we have out there, about 5,800 EDUs that we're now building. Council also adopted a $3 fee that was sunsetted recreation fee, and now the recreation $2 fee, the $3 public safety fee went on to help to begin to generate revenue to facility.
One thing that the ad hoc committee actually approved, $9 to $11 for the public safety facility. The size we were going to, just so you know, I just want to make that relevant. Yes.
In good context too, yes, there's the $3 charge wasn't the end all. I mean, we didn't even do it. It was just a starter to try to seed this project and start moving the resources, develop resources, pay for it. And our former finance director developed a model, went into some detail about portion of it being fee, portion of it being property or just other city resources, cannabis tax resources, sales of city properties, things of that nature that could help keep the fee low as could be, while at the same time relying on existing revenues without overly impacting the general fund and services. And that was all pre well, the inflationary period we're going through right now, which has changed the cost of everything. So, and even on those models, Mayor's right. $7 to $9 was kind of a sweet spot balancing fee revenues with tax and fee revenues. And those assumptions in the model were based off really aggressive growth rate, frankly. It was 2%, 2.5% per year of growth continued, which is, we haven't done that ever. Our last 10 years was 0.5%, and this year's, well, this decade's been about 2.5 total. So, there's some errors in the model, which really is not help the project. The initial estimates for the project were around 15 million. We started off with 15 million as a target design number. Sorry, I'm doing all the talking.
No, that's fine. You're good.
Uh,
You're at 15 million.
Right now, we are at 22 million. There's about $1 million-ish in contingency to, which will probably get eaten up pretty quickly with the continued inflation and cost of everything increasing. That inflation really hits us twofold. One of them's first, the building keeps running away on price, and the other is that cities aren't immune to inflation either, and our costs of everything or our ability to serve the debt are equally impacted. So we're kind of in a pinch point to really look hard at that, and it's really a question of what we want versus what we can afford, and balancing those revenues to not negatively impact the current state of the city, which frankly is, it's a little tenuous right now with the period we're going with high inflation and costs increasing and limited revenues. We're not calling crisis quite yet, but
Looking at making some cuts to the design.
yeah, and we need a facility that's gonna meet our future needs for sure. But we need to afford it. It's important. We don't want to set ourselves up for failure, so we're looking at long-term economic health of the city, building facilities that meet our staffing and our staff needs. And so the questions, I find ourselves asking ourselves, do we really need a courtroom in the chambers? Do we really need to move the admin over here that we just remodeled? We need a community center, which we just purchased a community center. Those, we have the ability to take a look at it. Still have a nice building that meets a nice police department. And just streamline, remove non-essential program elements. Chief architects and I, our owners rep, sat down and just took a red pen to, what do you need? What do you afford? And that went from 22,000 feet down to about 10,000 or 12,000, 10 to 12,000 square feet, which also lowers the site development costs, which reduces parking areas because you're not having your programming and parking for your meeting rooms and things of that nature, stormwater facilities. It just kind of ripples, the costs kind of ripple down. And so the wild card here is that they want to say.
Well, yeah, so I agree. I don't think this is the point of discussion is this is a definite need for our community.
Yeah.
Our current facility is, actually, we have a meeting tomorrow to talk about bridging that gap. If the public and the council decides to move forward with this new police station, which I highly encourage, we still are looking months out before this built. And even tomorrow, we have to talk about our situation we're faced with right now. From the minor to the major, what we have now is not working. So to John's point, from the beginning of this project, the price tag, you kind of get a wish list. Okay, this would be great. But keep in mind, police work is inherently complex. And what I say by that is there's a lot of rules and regulations outside the American Disabilities Act that we have to deal with the public internally, as far as evidence storage, as far as secure communication, secure computer, criminal history. There's a lot of things that have to be in this new police station that comes with a price tag. And it's not that we, oh, we want this cool whiz bang thing. It's, hey, these are the regulations and this is what we need to be a professional operating progressive police agency, not just for our community, but for also our employees. Again, I use this analogy that my first couple months here, we had one of our officers eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich right in the same area that was being processed fentanyl. Okay, and that's what we deal with now. So, but before I get kind of down the rabbit hole, to John's point is, and to Councilor Chilton's point, so we designed this facility with a public safety facility with the courtroom, with possibly other office space, and then do we really need that? And then and is that the best interest of our community in facing possible recession? That's through open source media that's coming, whether whatever outlet you look at. But we all feel the inflation, we all feel the pinch at the gas pump. So we started saying, okay, do we need this? Do we need that? No, we can probably do without it. We have other areas. And the police department itself is not immune. For example, we requested a garage that we can process vehicles in for evidence. Well, the truth be told, that's $1 million to have that. So do we really need it? No, we don't. We can use the state police crime lab in Salem if we have to process a vehicle, and we have other avenues. So that's what everybody combined through John, myself, and the architects are coming in. And we want to deliver a product that says this is the bare bones that we can have. But to John's point, we don't want to cut our nose off to spite our face, because I truly believe St. Helens is going to continue to grow. And if you look now, our police station now is 51 years old. Okay. We have to get this right, and ensure that we don't.
200 square feet.
Correct. We don't want to cut this police station. And I use the term police station because it's no longer going to be a public safety facility. Once you take out the public, it's just going to be a police station, which is fine. But we don't want to do what a lot of other agencies around the state of Oregon, when we toured these agencies, done is they value engineered these projects to where they open the door and they're already at full capacity. And I don't want to mention the names where they couldn't, one jurisdiction couldn't even demolish their old station because they had to use it for storage, because they council and the community said, no, that's too much. And it's a big challenge. So we sit in front of you today to, again, I know you, not to steal Coin Jacobs, right? You got big decisions, but this is one that's going to impact our community for future generations. And that's what we're looking forward to. We want to, the location, we want to showcase this facility, we want to be open to the public, but also keep in mind, we're driven by regulations, evidence storage, ventilation, security inside. So what we've narrowed this down to is not a want, it's a need. We need these things inside this facility that we can, keep our community safe, keep our employees safe. And we just don't have that now. It's sad it is. So, another issue that we're faced with in law enforcement is recruiting and retention. It is a buyer's market out there, and our officers and this is going to be a recruiting tool for us. And we can't overlook that, is that, hey, we do have applicants that come in and look at our current facility and they're wooed away to other agencies that, we were able to parity the pay. Now we have to look at the facility for future generations, and we want to keep who we have. I'll tell you, the new counselors, you have a fantastic core of police officers and police staff in this city. And that's not me sitting blowing smoke. Okay. I would put this core of employees on the St. Helens Police Department against any agency in the state of Nevada doing what they do with what they have. And I'm very proud of that. And I'm very proud of the fact that in 2022, the St. Helens Police Department is off the radar. We're not in local media doing anything wrong like other large jurisdictions. We don't have broken windows all the time. Our officers work hard. They sacrifice their own days off, family time to serve our citizens. So again, I'm sorry to get on my soapbox. I'm just saying that we are looking at this, John and I, to reduce the size, to save the cost, but eventually we have to make that decision. But what's working now isn't the best for our community, isn't best for our employees. So I would hope that we move in the direction that we can make it affordable to our citizens, because we don't want to, give a product that we don't want to put anybody into a position where they make decisions that we hear about. Okay, do I put food on the table, or do I pay my utility bill? We don't want to do that. But at the same time, it's a cost that comes with the business and the growth in our community, so.
So some of that decision's been made for us. And I'll just tell you what I mean about that. And that's the money for the project. The council, early in the project, we set up all the resolutions, get everything lined up to fund the project, and the council authorized her going out for a general obligation revenue bond and authorize that. Typically, it's real common, but you do that, you do bond sales after you know that you can get a permit for the project for one. After it's designed, it's ready to bid, all the construction drawings are ready to go, you've got a contractor, and you're either under construction, and then you go out and authorize the bond sale. Our former finance director went back in 2021, right after it passed this resolution, and authorized the bond sale. So we have 12.6 million sitting in the investment pool, earning investment pool rate. And the way the bonds were structured, there was no payments for the first 2 years. There's interest only on those first 2 years, so that would not kick in till the third year, which will be 2024. At which point we'll be paying $750,000 a year for the next 30 years. And there's 3 sales of bonds, and they total $12.6 million. And so we're trying to build a Florida facility that meets that 12.6 million.
So part of what happened is he messed up on the EDUs, the units that we were talking about.
That's another issue, but
Yeah,
some of the modeling was off too on the revenue side. So we still feel like we can deliver a project for 12.6 million. We feel like that project's going to affect the community, and largely depending on how much city revenues we can put into it, into that $6 to $9 probably range.
Yes.
Is going to be the.
that's where we can go with that. Is he had set it at 3, knowing the interest rate, and obviously,
Project it.
yes.
He projected wrong.
Yes, so, long story short, is it looks like it's gonna be $7 when after the interest rate kicks in, to continue this thing to a flow, actually before then. We need to do about $7 instead of a $4 increase in order to meet the requirement of the bonds that he has already signed with nobody's knowledge, so he no longer works here. But it's just unfortunate that, we've seen a packet like this and I'd never seen it. Walsh had never seen it. You ever seen it? Nobody had ever seen it.
Mayor,
Right?
the $7 are gonna be attached to what?
In your water bill.
It's already on
Yeah.
there currently, but it's
Yes.
gonna go up to 7. Right?
Yes,
Well, that would be the.
We have to.
If we make that decision. then we
Yes.
propose it.
That and looks like it was gonna be, but we still need to.
yes, and the ad hoc committee did, we've had plenty of, because we're trying to move forward and bring you guys aboard, and here's what's going on, oh man, okay. So the ad hoc committee, which was formed, was about a year and a half ago, that they finally made the
Yeah,
recommendation,
it was 2020, it was.
that they made the recommendation, though, was it 2 years ago?
No, because they came to it. It was 2 years ago. In a couple of days that we
So
received.
you
the
actually received
recommendation.
it, yes.
So they had been,
At that point in time, it was $9 to $11. We had opposition from particularly one person in the community. Just one that kept saying, no, this is gonna be way over cost. And I think the financial director found it his mission impossible to try to keep it as low as possible as he could. And didn't do us any justice. Is what happened.
No, and I've been working on this from the bone, very bare bones, so this one's near and dear to my heart. So I would love to see what cuts are being made. I'm sure you guys have already looked at it, and I'd like to look at some of the things that are really important to me. And when I went and toured other police stations, I felt very valuable. It's having separate interview rooms for victims, and that's something we don't offer right now. We don't have the capacity. That is the number one for me. We have to have that. I think it's super important to have that. Being able to have the safe area when
I
you go
like
to the
that too.
police station, yes, that is a huge asset, I think, that we need to have, so.
Yes, the initial cuts, we understand we still have to offer a level of service to our community. We're, just off the top of the head is, making the break room kitchen area smaller. We're removing the garage that we could work around. There is a discussion. So what was brought forward is that if you remove the courts and all the administration, that's going to change the dynamics of the hallways. It's going to change the whole layout of the project. So that could in and of itself reduce the price tag. Again, we don't want to make too many cuts in 10, 15 years down the road. The first thing that happens, and we see it in school districts, at the schools, you put modular trailers out there, and that kind of defeats the purpose of, so and John, I hope I'm not overstepping my bounds here. So I think that once, the cuts will be, and they reconfigure the drawings, and then we'll get down to it. But, because right off the bat, my concern was having the gender neutral rooms to change it. Right now, we have 18 lockers, and we have more employees than we do lockers. We have employees that don't have a locker.
Yeah.
And then, when you talk about different genders changing, that's real. And so, we have to ensure that 20 years down the road, there's enough changing rooms when the St. Helens Police Department possibly has 30 or 35 officers. So, but to your point, yes, Counselor, we should bring that back and, so you can see, okay, yes and no, with a explanation of why.
On the positive side, it sounds like McKinsey is able to work with you guys and meet, potentially, it sounds like they're know the dollar amount. And it's gonna be sufficient, it sounds like, for our needs. Potentially is what we are waiting to see, right? Is that what you guys have been working?
Yeah, I think with the
So that's-
exercise that we
that's a
did
positive.
was a pretty quick.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's down and dirty in an hour.
It's putting the Legos back together,
And again, for the new counselors, McKenzie's an architect company. This is what they specialize in. They build police station, fire station, pump.
Yeah.
So and I'm certain, although I don't want to speak for them, that they have encountered this challenge in the past and understand to work through it. And so they have our.
Essentially, we're asking to wipe off $9 million worth of building.
Cut that grocery list down a little bit, huh?
So, and it's not a complete throwaway of the existing. It's either or that we've done today as far as. There's some order of operations opportunities here for improvement, and that's a lot of it's on the, one of those things is. Land use permitting approval is a conditional use permit, is a facility is being located in an area that has flood hazards, so that's, the permittability of the facility is not foregone conclusion. The other has to go through a process, goes through the planning commission, has been the council. Be permitted, we feel pretty good about that, but it's Oregon, there's kinds of things to relate projects. So we're gonna move that up earlier in the timeline, so we don't make too much of an investment into this to not get stuck.
Does it change any of the work we've already started doing on the land? Because I know we've started some work over there.
That's what, that's
Yeah,
what-
it's, well, it'll be a smaller footprint. We still want, I think the project desired outcomes are to have a really good curb appeal. It's, it's the new station, it has a lot of, we should be proud of the facility that we're building here in the community for the next generations here. So right on the corner of Castor Road there, to the entrance to the mill. And also to be designed in a way that's expandable. If we just, if in the future, add those amenities back, we can do that in a way that makes sense. It's not a ugly,
Well, and
it's not a courthouse type addition.
so I just like that, and I stated the next process, what you're asking is actually the planning commission is approving the site. For us to, that's actually the next process, we can't do nothing until that actually gets approved. And we're able to move forward. That is the first step. The most crucial step is getting that done, and sooner than later.
And I think, crucial to that is I know at least one member of the commission, I don't know about all, still have some serious reservations about the floodplain issue. And so that whatever we come before the planning commission, we need to be ironclad that, that what we're proposing is, that we have, that we're not going to be flooded out or access. Maybe the building's not going to be, maybe the building itself would not be flooded, but are we still going to have access at the intersection or, egress through some other alternatives? So I just think as we get to the planning commission, it's still going to be very much on at least some of the planning commissioners' minds.
I think the plan was a catapult
Put a boat, have a boat, put a motor on our police station.
So what you're gonna see, I mean, I'm feeling consensus here is that Mackenzie's working right now on a scope to redesign the facility and come up with a new timeline, and it shouldn't be significantly delayed, it'll be, several months, it won't be years, but and we'll bring you back something to look at.
So we need that to go through the planning commission,
In order for it to get to.
so we can get a site prep, so we can get site prep.
We need a new site plan, we need
Yes.
to have at least exterior elevation accesses and entry points to the building,
Yes,
and not all necessarily every detail in.
exactly. And then I guess Mackenzie a chance to continue their work. We'll start actually doing a pad if it meets that requirement. Then we can start building, because we already have the money.
Right.
We already got the money. We're there.
We're gonna start.
You'll only
We need
be
to go.
on this project,
Yeah.
just making sure they all know.
Yes, yeah.
The longer we delay, the prices go up, the delay for goods and services.
That's the race fast.
There should be a sense of urgency within, in our,
So we've already keeping, softly directed them to push these things together for your approval.
I feel better. I've been dodging John about this. I'm like, this, we need to talk. I'm like, no, I don't want to talk about it.
Well, if we make the footprint smaller, it should hopefully appease the planning commission. Maybe we can, to your point, Mayor, maybe we can move it out of the flood zone. Because we won't need the large size parking lot because we won't have court. So there's some benefits.
but it also takes it a little bit further away, which loses a little curb appeal. So I mean, it's kind of, a little bit two ways, but I agree with you
And
100%.
just for edification of the new counselors is that this site was selected after we looked at many sites in the city. And it came down to accessing east and west of Highway 30. One of the challenges we have now where we're at, our current police facility, a lot of one-way streets. And then you hit a train and we're kind of, can't get to where we need to get to. So this location for the betterment of our community is the best that we found that we can access in case there's a train, on Gable and 30 and, we have other ways to get to the west side. Plus to John's point, we want to showcase this facility, this new station. We're going to be proud of it. It's something that St. Helens, the residents should be proud of. We want them when they're coming down to see it. And, so I think it's a good move.
And if you're not familiar with the gateway, the riverfront corridor, that actually comes right down through parts at Gable. It's all been drawn up. Couple turnabouts, new sidewalks, all that. There's a large turnabout right there where the police station is going at Johnny's Tavern, and then comes down Plymouth down into the new development here as well. So I mean, we're looking at all aspects of not just, you're thinking, well, that's gonna be totally reconfigured and That's Berkeley.
Yeah, and just too, and I know, Chief, that before, and of course, my and I'm sure Councilor Schulten's commitment on Mayor Schultz that, yeah, we gotta have this built, and we'll have to bite the bullet with the bite the bullet with the finances and all, but my understanding, one of your original arguments too, is that this facility allow for national certification of our force, et cetera, which would be very important for opportunities to get increased funding.
Grant funding from the federal government. So President Trump and President Biden, President Trump started this, that for the COPS office, so the defense, the federal government will give agencies grants to hire police officers if your agency is accredited or in the process of being accredited. And accreditation is just a standard used across for any, it could be for, we deal in the world, police departments and schools, I believe schools are accredited, and there's standards that you have to meet and proofs that you have to say, hey, we're accredited. The challenge that we have now is that our current facility, we don't even get in the door. We're not even 80, we can't have a person in a wheelchair cannot access into our police station. That's how old it is. To Councilor Schulten's point, we don't have a secure room to interview our victims of crimes. That's reality. It's not trying to over dramatize this. So by getting this new facility will open up many opportunities to help us fund future officers, future employees, training opportunities. We cannot get accredited because of our facility that it's nobody's fault. It's just, we're just not there yet. So, but thank you for that reminder.
Well, and I was reminded because I spent Christmas in Independence, and on the next day I went to Independence Civic Center and chatted with the police department personnel there, and I saw this nice plaque on the wall. Like, aha.
I thought you were gonna say you did another ride along.
No, I didn't.
Ride along.
Riding along with Officer Coy is quite.
We hope it's boring.
But it has been.
It's good to us. So.
Well, no, it has, no, he's a great conversationalist, but. Oh, okay.
John, anything relevant that you need to?
That's a big issue. It's a lot of, yeah, works. That's gonna be nice, but we don't. Ship over it, so.
Okay, so.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor, thank you, council. Congratulations, or I can go with this.
Nice to. All right, let's go on to our next item. And we're not gonna take a 4 o'clock break. We're just gonna, we don't have any executive.
Forever.
It shouldn't be a top tier.
I didn't want to interrupt your.
Go ahead and. Well, I want to see how, yeah, a lot.
No, it's not too bad.
I'm ready for a break.
I'll wait till he's done.
Okay.
You want to wait go between.
Yeah, yeah.
Just welcome new counselors, welcome new council. So it's a new day, a much younger council, and I think that's gonna be an opportunity to establish a new normal and have healthy dialogue and discussions and hopefully good decision making. Look forward to working with everybody, and it's a pleasure to do that. We're also both the new counselors have met with Rachel and myself to talk about some, onboarding, and there'll be a lot more. It's just drinking from a higher fire hose at first, but we've also been reaching out to our state senators. Weber, we lost Senator Johnson for her governor bid, and now we have Senator Weber. We're going to be meeting her tomorrow to kind of rebuild some of those relationships, to create connections to the outside world and resources, appropriations, and assistance to the governor's office, and things, and all of those things, and we've really in recent years really raised the elevation of partnership. Bringing Rachel on board to have dedicated to government affairs and working with all the local governments and state agencies, and to bring us all together as prove a lot of benefit. And so we're purposely relationships, nurturing relationships, doing good things. And our partner, I'll move on to Main Street, our partnership with Main Street. We have a memorandum of understanding with them. We're supporting them for a couple, 3 years of ARPA money with for staffing, for some office and conference kinds of things. So Mayor's been good about it.
So right now, they thanked us for the support of their, I was there last night. They were very appreciative of the city's support and their organization.
We had a quarterly check-in last week because that's for the MOU, to talk about things and talk about their role in the greater community, how they fit in with the other organizations, and how they fit in with the chamber and tourism and everything else, and how we're all working together for the common good of elevating the community here. And, the finance director recruitment is something that we typically handle those internally. This year, this recruitment and market felt it necessary to go out to the hire a recruiting firm to do that. And we did it for a month during December or through November, and we got a handful of applicants. Some of them are probably interviewable, there maybe be good, but we decided to extend that through this Friday to 6 to see what we have for applicants, and we'll be looking at that and coming back hopefully with some good news and recommendations for interviewing and things of that nature. But and in the finance department, Carol Green, our 26-year-old employee, is retiring accountant at the payroll.
Matter of fact, today's her birthday.
Today's her birthday.
Today's her birthday.
Together, but she's been here a little over 26 years, and
I thought you meant the 26-year-old.
I was playing out.
Started at
Young. She's, hers retiring, she wants to stay on to help her successor, so we've authorized her, or
We asked her.
we asked her, please.
the state.
Yeah, we asked her to say it.
It used to be the other way around, where you, they asked, and we kind of decided whether we didn't want to do that. But glad to have her as a resource, mentor, appreciate all her service to the community and all those years that she's been the paycheck person, so. We love Carol. That position, we'd like to recruit for her position. We actually did an internal recruitment. There's somebody internally that appears to be well qualified for that position, which would set off another vacancy in the utility building. So depending on how the finance directors look at the end of the week, I'm going to come back and talk to you about filling that position. And that would be a position we probably, we'll do an internal one again, but go out to the market and see what we get. There's some, if the finance director, when you're a coach, you like to pick your own team, right? So I don't want to pick somebody else. It's another player. But at the same time, there's a pretty good workload, and we'll kind of assess if we can make it through that period. So the GROW initiative, the Growing Rural Oregon Initiative, if you haven't heard about that, that's a something that we've working through Colpack and Ariane Colombo came to my desk, and that we grabbed onto it. It's it's supporting local entrepreneurs, and St. Helens got tapped as one of 5 communities in the state to do this. It's $100,000 of 5 years, so it's $500,000 in this initial pilot, and we're going to use Columbia Economic Team as a point of contact for that, because it'll help. They're going to work through. They've agreed to accept it. It helps economic development. Community Columbia Economic Team is our economic development agency that we support. They're going to support the St. Helens program, and I think it's going to be a good relationship there. Speaking about the notice, Berkeley and Senators Berkeley and Wyden federal level 2023 omnibus appropriations package. St. Helens and our community here received $340,000 in federal funding for the police technology needs, which is fantastic news. We've received $814,000 through Columbia Economic Team towards mostly the advanced manufacturing, OMIC related spending, and then our local Riverside Training Center, which we're Life Empowered is going to receive $500,000, $500,000 going to their new facility at Port Avenue, which will be something the city can support. There are 2 community development block grants open at any time, and cities and counties are the only ones eligible to receive community development block grants. The county really have a program. The city is pretty staffed up, and we're pretty versed in that. Our resources internally, which Annie didn't show, and Rachel and others are pretty oiled machine as far as being able to make applications, manage projects, and bring these resources in. So that comes with council's concurrence. You pick which, you decide whether which programs we're going to go after, who we're going to sponsor, and the council's talked about supporting Life Empowered. So I'm on alternate on the Coal Pack. Mayor, I should have talked to you about this before. The Coal Pack Board, the mayor is the designee for the city of St. Helens. Coal Pack is a economic development group regional. And it's Columbia, Clatsop, Tillamook, and Western Washington County. And their check signer. And signing authority, I'm not on the and I'm an alternate on the board, and they're wanting either for me to be on the board or you to be a check signer. If you want to do that.
Yeah.
Too big of a deal.
I like context.
You say that. During
Yes.
during COVID, the piles were billions of dollars worth of checks here.
Well, maybe I could be the other person. You could be the center.
And if you want to do that, that would be you could switch and I'd be the board member, and you could be the alternate, and but that would take a motion of the council. OPAC is asking because they just in their minutes, they need to reflect for in case an audit. So,
What we do, yes.
so that would be an action item if you wanted to.
Are they back to meeting in person finally? I mean, they have been for a little while, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, and that. haven't attended.
Well, and they're, it's
Check signer then.
it's Newport, it's Astoria,
Yes.
it's Banks,
Yeah.
it's a whole. It's a big commitment of driving. You spend 2 hours to go to a 2-hour meeting and
Yeah,
Wow.
we went over to Tillamook.
that happens regularly, so it's not a small commitment. Our projects, all our projects are advancing nicely. The First and Strand, the sewer infrastructure funding, we're looking at a development block grant, so we want to stay, we're looking at a $2.5 million.
We can manage too.
What was the other one you said? I know we have.
Life and Tower.
Yeah.
This right here.
And this, the $2.5 million, we're gonna go for it to sewer infrastructure grant up there, so.
Okay.
US Ecology, we took a little pause there, that the US Ecology and Ecology Public Services, which is their parent company, have merged. We have an agreement, exclusive negotiating agreement. Some staff changes moved around. They're still interested in our project. We've got the new people. We're having introductions next week to talk about the wastewater, Central Waterfront project and the repurposing of the wastewater lagoons. There'll be more on that in the coming weeks. And then we've had quite a bit of interest in the mill site, so that's great. So keep looking at big picture. Yeah. So. The restructuring of park and recreation, that your action at the last meeting is kind of set off a chain of dividing the operations of parks into public works, and there's some details to figure out right there that we're working through. We're meeting regularly about that. And I think there's 2 lenses with that restructure. And one of them is the public facing into the city. You're as a citizen looking in. It's going to look exactly the same. Our social media, Crystal, this is just, it's going to be parks and recreation is going to be the same social media, the same conservation sites, all the same. It's just on the back end, how that is, the duties are divided up and how it's done. So,
I'm sure Crystal appreciates that.
because undoing that is
Yeah.
really challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not recommended once you put something in place and brand it to change it.
In that same light, the Parks Commission at the next meeting is considering a name change of the commission. And they are an advisory committee.
Yeah.
So there'll be some discussion about that, and
It'll be advisory, not,
it'll be great.
Yeah.
And,
it's ultimately,
yeah.
They've been talking about a name change for years, haven't they?
well. They went from parks to parks and recreation, well, several iterations.
Well, and that's it, it was the Mike and Ped, there's been a lot of different things over the years.
But it's been the council though that has approved the change.
Right.
So they can advise if they want it, but
Yeah, it is in code that it's Park and Rec, so it would take a code
Yeah,
revision.
yeah.
Just. It's gonna be something. Tourism, there's a lot about talk about tourism and just, I can't. tourism is just super important to this community and our success with the waterfront. And, you know, Halloween's great. It's a limited duration. It's really put us on the map in a lot of regards. We're recognized across the state, across the nation, for some places across the world for, you know, St. Helens has just been discovered in that aspect, but keeping it going, the rest of this, we want to see hotels and restaurants and, you know, a lot of value investment in a thriving downtown and people come to St. Helens and, just, you know, what that looks like is there's other activities that kind of, you know, the Sand Island with the camping and, you know, all the other things we can think to keep these spaces activated, people working together and good outcomes. And we have the river. There's an amazing asset. Something to share. Less exciting is like to get council's input and policy on a food center policy. It's really in the summertime, it gets hot, people, you know, perish over overheating and you know, in many respects, you know, a lot of it's public health. We feel like it's public health duty, but you know, Crucible and others have stepped up when it's really hot to say what's going on here. We need to, you know, make use of our facilities. And what's the council's comfort level with opening these facilities, scheduling overtime, incurring costs, and to provide spaces, you know, typically during business hours. Yeah, you know, the cooling centers are a little bit different than the warming centers because the warming centers are usually the darker hours at night, and we don't feel like we're well resourced to provide those services. But for the cooling centers, I'd like to have a discussion at a future work session about policy around that. So,
Could we have legal counsel involved in that?
so Governor Brown's going out of office order, I don't know if it was in the paper, waived a whole lot of fees and fines for cities, anything past October, not everything, there's certain fees and fines. After October 2020, there was just a forgiveness of all waiver of all those fees, and the Salem judge filed an injunction. So our judge has just said, hey, you know, I asked the court to evaluate what that means in dollars, and they've kind of stopped with this injunction to say basically they're giving, she's waived all our money away to try to get people their driver's licenses back. And that issue is not that great here. So that doesn't seem to be the barrier. House Bill 3115, our you know, implementation of the July of this year, comes into effect. Planning Commission and their role, interest in being part of the rulemaking process and just the process generally is great with the subcommittee. And what I did is I reached out to a number of people that I felt were, you know, experts in the field, including our own insurance company, CIS, which said that we would, you know, who would they recommend to use to review our code and recommend updates. And they gave me some names, which is the names that I had already used, and so they've actually agreed to pay for the review. So that both our insurance companies actually going to pay the expense. We're having a meeting with the subcommittee with Mr. Toski and Kastner and Jacob and myself to kind of frame the issue next week and just advance the work and code revision and, you know, all the elements surrounding around that community partnership and things in that. With Mayor.
No.
Like, what are you about to say?
You work with me.
League of Oregon Cities.
Somewhere, my 2 hour line there because I start getting off enough.
I know.
Yeah. You work with me.
Yeah, there's the Oregon Mayors Association has put together a legislative ask to support homes. It's not a lot, not enough, but it's something. There's a capita distribution. There's a capital improvement distribution. So we did a fax memo and it goes back to them. It becomes part of a package, another 100 and some cities, the legislature will consider.
Send that out or something?
Yeah, it was just it's a one pager.
It's for the mayor's.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that'd be of interest.
We'll do that. Just was a short notice.
And I just wanted to make sure that, you know, I'm not so, saying, this isn't like saying we're in support of, no, this is just more of questions and answers to. That's-
For formalities, you know, if things are gonna be imposed on us, how can we, you know?
What are the mayors thinking?
I think the rest can wait.
If you got good,
No, it's
Yeah.
it's not action stuff. It's just the new counselors. I think I'm on the League of Oregon City. This is my third year term on the executive committee. We've just hired an executive director and strategic planning process and I have committee assignments to diversity, equity, inclusion and finance committees and audit committees and that group. And I'm also on the Oregon City Managers Association board in my fourth year. And
senior voting member.
but my first year I filled it.
Yeah, the big
so
deal there.
No, it's cool when you see his name up on the screen. I'm like,
I'm on various committees and those groups as well. ICMA credential manager is a status that Oregon, I think there's about 20 managers maybe that have that status. I have earned that, and part of that, there's a credentialing process. You have to submit an annual report, and I just found out yesterday that it was accepted, which got kicked back the first time. But next year will be more of a in-depth kind of a 360 review kind of thing. So council and others will be part of that process. Good. So.
Awesome. That's good stuff. You just left that out.
All right.
You're trying to leave out the good stuff. You hear that? I don't want to talk about me.
Y'all doing a great job of presenting at League of Oregon City, showing the Riverfront project in St. Helens, and people were just like, wow, that's a really cool project, you know, so.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and take a recess, but we're gonna come back. We're gonna go into executive session or S-192. Is it D, labor negotiation, and E, real property, and H, consulting with council for potential litigation, right?
Should be clearly.
So we're gonna take a 10-minute break.
It's education, so.
It's litigation.
Yeah.